Howdy. Ho. Um, I want to talk a little bit about Howard Schultz, CEO of Starbucks. I was watching the Acquired podcast the other day, and first of all, it's a great podcast. Check it out, dive into it. Recently, it's blown up, it's gotten super, super popular for obvious reasons. The hosts are great at what they do, passionate, informative, inspiring. It really drives you, it moves you, it highlights very well why these people are as successful as they are. I think it allows an opportunity for the viewer to get insight, but a very intimate sort of insight into the nature of the kind of people, it's not just some elusive eat the rich kind of bullshit. It's you get to see the personality, the characteristics that drive such people to success in the first place. And the podcast, it humanizes the whole thing. It reduces that difference, and it kind of shows us why they're human beings just like the rest of us. So, really good podcast, Acquired. Yeah, check it out. They have some awesome episodes. LVMH is another one that's one of my favorites. Hermes is also interesting. It's so cool to get to see how these various companies are conceived. But I want to talk about Starbucks. The reason I want to talk about Starbucks is because I recently posted a short and in the short I talked about how Starbucks is consistent. It's consistently decent. If you person, I have a thing for quality coffee, and Starbucks is not the highest quality, but it's good quality, and more than anything, it's consistent globally. And I can say that with assuredness because I have been to various countries, largely in Southeast and East Asia. I'm pretty sure in Europe too it'd be fine. Like wherever there's a Starbucks, I'm sure it'd be great. But various countries there, the coffee was. I mean, look, once in a while every coffee misses the mark, and that's of course it's contingent on the actual barista and how they prepare your coffee. But overall, the experience is consistent. Whenever I was there, and it's not just that the experience is consistent in taste and quality and flavor. It's also consistent in the ambience and the environment. Like when I go to a Starbucks anywhere in the world, I know I'm at a Starbucks.
And certainly, I've always said, as Starbucks was growing, that the ubiquity of Starbucks was an enemy to the company. And the challenge was we have to figure out a way to ensure the fact that we are getting smaller as we're getting bigger. And specifically, how do we maintain intimacy and the currency of trust with our customers and our people? That, unto itself, is kind of the capsule of making sure that the growth doesn't become so intoxicating and so seductive that we lose sight of the really secret of the company, which was the internal culture and values which built the brand and built the relationship with the customer.
Like it brings me back, and in a sense, it's weird. It's like Starbucks is it has such a strong sense of what it is that everywhere you go, it gives you this kind of comfort that you've stepped into a Starbucks, and it sort of takes you back. It connects you that even it's like a home away from home. It sort of exists functionally as its own country within a country in a weird way, but it's super cool. I think they do generally maintain pretty good standards overall, and like I said, the coffee is consistent. I don't care how many people disagree with this idea or they hate on Starbucks. I'm not arguing about the price point. It is definitely a premium purchase. It might not be the most financially responsible purchase, but it is of consistent, decent quality, and sometimes that consistency, the convenience of having access to that consistency is worth paying the price, at least for me as as an individual consumer. You know, it's it's awesome because when I watched this Acquired podcast, it gave me insight into a man who, I was, honestly speaking, I was moved. I was actually just, I was inspired and I was moved by how deeply passionate somebody can be about a thing, like anything. And he wasn't just passionate about coffee, so to speak. He was passionate about the customer, and he's so entrenched in facilitating the experience for the customer. And
The intimacy with the customer and the barista became a very powerful component of the equity of the experience. And I've always thought, in so many ways, Starbucks became the first experiential brand at scale. We didn't spend any money on marketing, zero. There was no money for marketing. And the cup, the iconic cup, became a badge of honor because people were doing something that was new and novel and walking in the street with it. And people, what is that? There's a lot of that kind of stuff.
obviously I've heard of recently of Starbucks and how it's underperforming, and it's being headed by new leadership and so on. But this was the original CEO. He's the one who founded Starbucks, who took it to where it is today. He led it there. So, of course, the way this man describes coffee and the consumption of coffee and the psychology of coffee.
I would bring investors to the 2 or 3 stores, and I would make sure there was a fair amount of people in the space. And that's when I started talking about the language of community and the third place. And that's what I saw in Italy. The unlock and the epiphany, of course, it was the romance of espresso, but it was the sense of community. And that is what was happening very early on in the 2 stores in Seattle and the one in Vancouver. You could see it.
What would people do after they bought the coffee? I mean, you said these are very small places.
They would stand up, because the 2 stores didn't have seating right away. They would stand up at the coffee bar at the window on Columbia Center. And it was at 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, they were hanging out there. And then late morning, they were coming back. And you could just feel the relationship that people were having with one another around human connection. I know it sounds trite, but I could see it back then. And as I was talking to people about the investment opportunity, I was pointing out, like, look what's happening here. There's something happening. There's some magic going on here. It's not just the coffee. The coffee was the conduit.
The philosophy that underpins it, it's incredible. It's incredible. And, it's very difficult to reproduce or mirror such a profound passion without authenticity. So you can really see that this sort of connection that he has with, I think it's how he actually leaves. It's because it's the way that he leaves his mark on the world. It's the way that he produces value for other people through this effort, and it resonates with who he is at producing value in that way. I mean, again, I'm just objectively based off one podcast going over it. I just thought it was so fascinating and incredible that an individual can be so deeply passionate about coffee, the experience of coffee, and the results speak for themselves. So I think on a higher level, if I had to extract what that means or what sort of lesson to take from that, it's pick things that really resonate with your spirit, that move you to act in good conscience and good faith, and pick things that you would sacrifice everything for, because they're not worth picking otherwise. It's not worth the pursuit. Truly, if you're able to, and this is probably the hardest part of the quest of life, is pinpointing exactly what those things are in a way that you can articulate and actually concretely identify in the material space how to if you can identify in the material space what actually satiates your soul and what drives you and moves you, if you can identify that, no matter what, through thick and thin, push to pursue that. Do not let it slip. Do not let it slide, because I think, as is evident by people who do that, one of them being this ex-former CEO of Starbucks, it's evident that it leads a man to unearth his highest potential, to become a outstanding human being overall, something that, to possess some quality of character that resonates universally and that reflects something that is the best in all of us. And to me, that is the highest order of being, especially for a man. But I just thought, not only, I mean, when you're able to strike into a passion like that, into something that consumes you like that, the quality of your ideas, they just improve dramatically so much, and it creates boundless energy in the world. Like, at some point they discussed, the introduction of apps and new technologies, and they discussed various other aspects of the business model that were new and that they introduced. And when you bring about these sort of new processes and inventions and ways of doing things, the ideas then, they tend to inspire, and they tend to become a source of energy that other people's ideas can bounce off of, and that usually propels things forward in an interesting way. Like, the intermarriage of coffee and technology. Who would have thought 100 years ago that that's where we would be? But that's where we are. And it was, if I'm remembering correctly, a great investment for Starbucks with great returns. I was just fascinated and amazed by how moving a pursuit can be. And I think in watching that interview, I got a real sense of, you get to palpably look at what it really means to be consumed by a passion, to actually be one with your purpose. And I mean, the man, just off a quick Google search, he's a multi-billionaire. So you can see how the universe, and well, not just that, actually, he's a multi-billionaire, but also along the way, as he's telling his story, it's so crazy how things line up for everything to fall into place. Like, just the caliber of people that he meets, the quality of his business partners, the way their interactions go, and the outcomes that it leads them to. It's really powerful how being in your highest space and performing at your peak caliber attracts the right pieces to put together the vessel that can bring you that can move worlds. Honestly, that can change the face of the species. That is so cool. It's incredible. But yeah, fantastic episode. I loved it. Again, very inspiring, and I think this actually understanding the psyche behind, the spirit behind Starbucks, as obviously expressed by this individual, it added a sort of color. Even, and I'm always, I know it's a megacorp, and megacorps are diluted and watered down, and I think actually Starbucks is probably the most has remained relatively true to its original color, and that's something he described in the interview. Was his goal was never to let Starbucks become this, global diluted franchise that just sells some shoddy coffee. So
The ubiquity of Starbucks was an enemy to the company.
for the scale that they're operating at, and I mean, there's a lot of people who dislike that short about me saying Starbucks is consistent globally, is they don't understand the magnitude at which this operation is operating. It takes a level of appreciation, and I would actually suggest reading Adam Smith's seminal book, Wealth of Nations, where, he sort of talks about in the book the importance of the connectivity of the economy, of sort of the logistics of how product moves around the world and how that creates value, and through everybody specializing and so on and so forth. But the point is, it takes some intense, incredible level of coordination, organization. It takes amazing degree of conscientiousness, will in the face of turbulent times. It takes a whole caliber of the best of who we are to actually create an institution that still is able to reflect, even if it's not 100%, 80% of its original, authentic roots. And I think this podcast gave me a sort of appreciation for the mind behind the coffee, behind the brand, behind the institution. And it made me appreciate it. Again, not necessarily because of its flavor or its options, like nothing, not on such a basic level. It made me simply appreciate that I know what this product is, no matter where I go and who I become 30 years from now, 20 years from now. The fact that it was there for me 10 years ago, and it's the consistency of it that facilitates a sense of comfort that I think is unmatched and not found in most other consumable foods. And I think that's the stuff that makes something worth paying for. It's crazy. That's powerful when you can facilitate a human experience through something as tangible, a consumable, something just like coffee, right? When you can facilitate a profound experience that it brings people back a little bit to themselves, no matter where they are in the world. I think that's a superpower. That's something incredible that you've tapped into. So kudos to him again. Inspired, very awesome episode. I think the man deserves his accolades, and all that he has clearly, I mean, the caliber and the level that he's at reflects the level of the effort, the universe aligning with a true purpose that's reflected in him too, and who he is. It's good to see. Inspiring and moving. Makes you want to actually do something with your damn self. Get up and find what you can fixate on that much, whether it's money, booze, liquor, but do something maybe productive with it. I don't know. It could be the worst things, could be the best things. Just don't destroy yourself while doing it. Create something that uplifts everybody in some way, or as many people as you can through the system that you create. But yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys later.